So we are seeing remote work die in front of our very eyes. Amazon just announced a couple days ago that they're going to be forcing a lot of workers back into the office, and the expectation is that a lot of other companies are going to follow suit. So the idea is what's going to happen to remote work, and I'm convinced myself that it's going to be gone within 2 to 3 years. There's no way that remote work as it stands, it's too awesome for the employees. It's too awesome for it to last because we've gotten our lives back. It's that simple. Like I have spoken to other coworkers, and I'm at a remote work company. Like I'm so happy to be at a company that's 100% remote. We were remote before even COVID, but just how our lives have been changed. The culture of my company, you can go and have time to pick up your kids if you have to do that, right? As long as work gets done. There's so much flexibility and grace in the DNA of the company that I work for that it's amazing, right? We have that ability, and they trust you with your time. And that's not to say that other companies don't do that as well, but I think what we're starting to see is if companies, again, I'm not going to say anything specific, but other companies, they want to force workers back into the office because they can see small efficiency gains. And like that's negligible, right? Like we can argue that and say it's remote work is better, being in person is better, and there's actually been studies that have proven the opposite, that being remote is actually better for workers' productivity. They'll work more hours because like they'll be working at 7 p.m. or something like that, right? But the idea is like if the company that you work for runs a calculation, maybe some consultancy agency runs it for them and says, oh, hey, like you can get 1% more efficiency if you force everyone back into the office. And that company is obligated to do that, right? They hit the button and say, okay, everyone's back to the office. And to people like myself, like I had a 2-hour commute from San Jose to San Francisco, and it was insane. It was 4 hours total, and I lost my life. When you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you come back at 8 o'clock at night, you don't have a like on the weekdays. And then on the weekends, you're so tired, you just want to go to sleep. And like I was hustling. I only lasted like 4 months before I passed out on the train. Like I lost it. But I talked to people, and these people had more hustle in their elbow than I had my entire body. But I talked to people on the train, and they would tell me like, hey, Michael, like, yeah, I've been doing this for 6 years, 6 months, 12 years, my entire life. And I couldn't believe it. Like I was like, how do you do this without losing your mind? And this whole reset has happened with COVID, where now we're able to see what life is like without a commute. We got that experience. We all got that experience. If we were lucky enough to not be laid off during COVID, which sucked too, right? And it was like, cool, this is how much time I can save. I can give more time to my family. I can give more time to my kids. I can give more time to my dogs. Everyone got a dog during COVID, right? We got a glance of that, and it's always harder to take something away from someone than to give it to someone, right? It's human nature. Once we've been given something, we start taking it for granted. And I think, let's be honest, we probably took remote work for granted the past couple of years. We saw, hey, this is what remote work looks like. And then now we're just like, oh yeah, this is every day. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I had to drive 2 hours to work? Is that what I was doing? I did that? And now it's going to be such a shock, right? And that's also part of human nature. There's the good and the bad, right? Like the good things never last, but the benefit of that is neither do the bad, right? So if I had the greatest house in the world, a $3 million mansion with a pool and a bowling alley, whatever, after probably 6 months, who knows, a year, if I really like bowling, it might be longer, but I'm going to get bored of that, right? But the flip side is that if there's been studies on this, right? If I end up in a wheelchair for whatever reason, I'm going to be really, really sad and depressed. But after like 6 months to a year, like Lord willing, I will overcome that. And humans, like we do, like we get better and we adapt, right? That terrible situation is okay now. I've adapted. So that's the situation now with remote work is like we're just going to be thrown right into the furnace of going back to the commute, going back to the 30 minutes to an hour. And like as cities have gotten bigger, right? Like the idea of commuting used to be by foot, and then it was like, I don't know, by horse, right? At some point in time, and then it was like by car. And that allowed people to live further and further out, right? But like we've built out cities to have people having longer than a 30-minute commute, and they're still traveling by car, right? Like, I don't know, the solution is like to have some driverless cars or supersonic trains, right? Or whatever. But like, I think we've all realized that, right? The quality of life decline if you have to start commuting again, especially over a 30-minute commute. Because that starts to take hours off of your life, right? And I had bosses who I would work with who'd also have long commutes. And I remember talking to him, and he was telling me how like he talked to his doctor, he was having heart problems. And his doctor had basically said, like, he was a doctor in the Bay Area, he was like, yeah, like it's not uncommon for the professionals in the tech industry or just really in the Bay Area, like to have heart problems at age like 40. Like because of stress. And a lot of that came from a commute. They would be commuting an hour and a half and 2 hours. And like a lot of this just isn't being like said. I don't think like the health impact of people, like people are being harmed because of a commute, right? And it's just like, it's crazy to think that like we as a society are okay with that. And it's wild, right? And this goes back to the whole like side gig thing too, is like, well, when you're in a situation and you see like how much little power you have in these situations of like, oh, going back to the office, my life is completely changed. You think to yourself like, man, like how do I get a side gig and how do I like diversify my income stream? I sound like I'm shilling something when I say that, or I'm about to sell you like an Airbnb course, but I'm not. But right, like that's that's the idea of like how can I build more self-sufficiency in my life, like in my job. I'm thankful that I have a super great job who like supports me. My boss is great. Like I'm super happy there, but I would love to like to help other people who want to do that, right? And I built a side gig just because I get bored really easily, and it's fun to just build stuff. But that's what's so appealing about entrepreneurship and having a side gig is like you have an ability to build something for yourself, and there's such an amount of pride that comes in that, right? I had never built anything by myself before because I was afraid to, honestly. Like I was afraid of failing, and then it was like, man, I failed, therefore I'm a failure. But yeah, anyways, that was kind of my rant. Would love to hear what y'all are thinking. If you're remote, if you've never been remote, like why are companies taking us back? It makes no sense. Yep, see you guys in the comments. Take care.